Welcome grade 7 and 8 to our first video on a series of videos that will go over science fair in a little bit more detail. So the first thing that I want to do, and in this video, I want to take a look at a science fair overview. So in this video, we're going to take a look at your finished product. And it kind of seems strange starting at the end, but it's good to get a look at what the whole thing is going to be at the very end. And then we can piece together the different steps and the different parts along the way to understand a little bit better how to get there. So right here, I have a display board. The display board that's going to be one of your final parts of your project. And this isn't something that we need to worry about until later on in February. But all the work that you're doing is going into putting different parts onto this display board in order to create a big, larger project. So let's go over the different parts that are going to go on here. First of all, at the very top here, right in the top center is where you're going to want your nice big title. And your title is going to be something that's catchy, something that is going to get everyone's attention, but that's something that you can come up with at the very, very end. With your science fair project, from beginning to end, it's sort of going to start here on the top left-hand side, work its way down, then move to the center part, and then to the right-hand side, making its way down as well. At the very top here, we're going to start off with a question. And your question is, what is it that you're looking at solving? What's the question that your science fair project is looking to answer? And as soon as we have a question, we then create a hypothesis based on that particular question. We'll go over a little bit more about both of these in our next video, but the question and a hypothesis are things that initially start you off thinking about, what do I want this project to really be about? Once you have your question and your hypothesis on this side as well, you're going to create a list of materials. So your materials list. I go right about there. And then after your materials list, which is just a listing of all the different things you need for your experiment, we're going to have our procedure. And again, we'll talk about what these words all mean and what's included in all of these. But that's what the left-hand side of your project is primarily going to look like. Now, right in the middle, this is where the main part of your project is. And this is reserved for graphs, for charts, and for your results. Your graphs, charts, and your results are going to be the main part here. You're going to have 3 or 4 good graphs or charts or visuals that could go along with the experiment that you did in order to show the information that you found as you went about and doing your experiments. And the results is just a written up version of what you found. Moving over to the right-hand side here, at the very top, we're going to have a conclusion. Now, this conclusion is not the same as your results. The results tell you basically what numbers you got or what results did you get from the experiments that you did. The conclusion ties those results together with your question, your hypothesis, how you did your project, as well as reflecting on if there's any ways to improve in your project too. After conclusion, we have something that's a little bit unique to our science fair than the public system, and that's a Christian perspective. We're going to be writing about our Christian perspective within science and doing experiments in general. And for those of you who are stuck maybe thinking, well, how do I write a science fair project on Mentos and Coke, for example? We're going to talk about that. And so stay tuned for that video to get a little bit more information on what that might look like. Below that, we're going to have something called an abstract. Now, an abstract, we're going to talk about that as well, but it's basically a short, and the key thing here is short, summary of the entire project. It's kind of like if you took a look at a book and you took a look at the back of the book, where it gives you kind of a little bit of an idea of what's in the book, except for that kind of leaves you hanging a little bit. An abstract is meant to give you a complete picture of the whole project, but in a really small, condensed form. Generally, this is something that people will read first, and that gives them an idea about whether they want to take a look at the in-depth research that you did and the results that you got that's found in the rest of your project as well. We have something that's a little bit unique here, and that is, it's hard to kind of draw it maybe this way, but on the back of your project, kind of in the back corner here behind the abstract, you're actually going to, that's going to be the place where you're going to put your works cited. So you will be doing some research. No matter what your project is, you will be doing some research with this. And whatever resources you end up looking up to give you some of that background research information that will help form your hypothesis, you will need to make sure that's put in a properly cited space. And so that works cited is going to be on the back, and you're required to have a minimum of 3 sources for the research portion of your project. Now I have 2 things at the front here as well. The one is something called your written report. Now your written report, although it is something that is large, it has a lot of different parts to it. It's really just the collection of all these things that are on your board. So you'll have a section where, yes, you have your question up here on your board and your hypothesis, but there will be another copy inside this whole written report, which is going to be a document of all of your typed final results, information, all of those sorts of things in a nice organized way. We'll have a video talking about that and how to do that as well. On the right-hand side here, you're going to have what's called your research journal or your logbook. It can go by a lot of different names. And so this is something that you should have already started. As soon as you start your project, you need to be creating a research journal, which is kind of like a science experiment diary. You're going to write the date that you're working on something, and then you're going to be writing a detailed account of what you found, what you did, and the information that's there. I would say that you should expect to have probably about 3 to 5 journal entries per week. Every time you're working on this project, you should be writing a journal entry, and you should be recording the different things that you worked on, or even the different things that you found if you're in the results section of things on your project, so that someone could see that, read that, and they could get a little glimpse inside your mind, a little bit of glimpse inside the process of going through this entire project. These are the main parts of your science fair project that are all going to be due early March when we're finally finished everything that's here. There may be 2 other parts depending on what type of project you might have or the information that you might have received. One, you might have some different visuals. So for example, if you decided to make something really cool, or you had a part of your experiment that you were able to bring and put with it, you might include that in front of your science fair project as well. And then another thing, and we'll go into much more detail about this a little bit later on, but if you are including people in your project, if you are experimenting on people in a way, then you are actually going to need permission forms or consent forms. And we'll talk about what needs to be included in that as well. But you're going to be creating some permission forms or some consent forms. And it's good to be able to display that in front of your project. It will also be within the written report too, but it's good to be able to show that as well. So now that we have an overview of where we're going with this science fair project, the next number of videos are going to be stepping through each of these parts individually and giving you much more detail on, for example, how do we write a good question or hypothesis, or a materials list or procedure. And so we're going to be going through all of these. So stay tuned. And if you are someone who's working ahead, fantastic. You can feel free to check out some of these other videos, which might give you further detail on those particular parts of the project. And again, if you're stuck as well, remember that you do have that science fair student workbook. If you have the hard copy at home, great. Otherwise, there's a digital copy of it on our Science Google Classroom page that you can take a look to help give you some more information as well. Have a great rest of your evening or day, grade 7 and 8, and I hope this helped give you an overview of the science fair project.